It seems like every FPL manager is buying Watkins or EZE going into game week 37, but I think one of those might actually be in a void that we have to talk about in today's video, alongside, of course, whether we should be selling Mo Salah, as it seems a lot of managers already have. So as always, if you look forward to today's video, make sure to drop a like, and of course, hit that subscribe button. There's only 2 game weeks left of the season. Enough waffling, let's get into today's video. So first up, we have to talk about the most bought player going into game week 37, and that is going to be Ollie Watkins. 250,000 buys already. I would not be surprised at all if that goes over 500,000 and plus by the time we get to the Friday deadline. And we've got to talk about why managers are buying him, maybe why we should consider not buying him if you're a manager like myself who can't get there. We could offer some sort of reassurance, even though it might be very, very little. So first and foremost, we got to remind ourselves of why managers are buying him. And it's because of the fixtures. Tottenham at home and Man United away on paper doesn't sound fantastic. It's not like they're playing against relegated teams. Well, close relegated teams when you consider they're 15th and 16th respectively in the table. But the big factor and why these fixtures are so good is because of the Europa League final. Now, the game against Spurs is on the Friday night because they managed to move it back slightly. The Europa League final is on the Wednesday, and then, of course, the Man United game is on the Sunday. So, of course, we all have our own opinions on what sort of team is going to be featured for Spurs and Man United in those games. Personally, I think Spurs will play quite a strong team in preparation for the final, but you know the mindset, both manager and players, is going to be fully on that Europa League final. And in terms of Man United, if you're someone who is buying Watkins, you kind of want Man United to win that Europa League final, because going into that final game of the season, yes, it will be at Old Trafford, but no player or fan is going to care whether they win that game, because all they're going to be doing is parading that Europa League trophy. So if you're buying Watkins right now, I think it's fantastic. When we look at some of the pros here, I'm expecting him to play 90 minutes in both. We had that period where Rashford was the number 9, Watkins was benched. Then we've seen Watkins integrated back into the team, but slight rotation. We finally saw 90 minutes back for him in game week 36. And if I was to predict minutes, I just think he plays 90 in both. I really think now Emery is just locking down this top 5 position. And I think Watkins is the guy that he can trust. And I think he's going to be the main man. As I discussed the Spurs and Man United situation with the Europa League, and also when we're buying players right now, it's very difficult, and I wouldn't recommend buying from teams that effectively have nothing to play for. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean league position. You could also have teams that have a new manager, for example, that is trying to prove a point in their team and to the fan base. For example, somebody like David Moyes isn't the best example, but somebody like that who got appointed throughout this season. So I personally think Villa is one of the top teams from a motivation perspective trying to get top 5. And if you are buying Ollie Watkins and it maybe is for a -4, I don't think it's too bad, because I really do think he's one of the standout captaincy picks this week. When we look at the other options available to us in Buemo at home against Fulham, Salah away against Brighton, Isak not an option this game week, Haaland if you want to go brave, but with the FA Cup final I don't think people will. I really do think he's one of the standout picks this week and kind of justifies not only buying him, but maybe taking a -4 if you're a little bit scared to. Now, of course, there isn't all pros regarding Watkins, and I'm trying to find some negatives because, as I said, I don't think I'm buying him, so I've got to find something to cling on to. First one, no Tielemans, out for the rest of the season. That is going to hinder them slightly. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a double pivot once again of Onana and Kamara. We could see McGinn integrated into that team as well, but without Tielemans in the team, the progressive passing is going to be a little bit devoid. I think we saw that a little bit in the numbers that Villa put up in their game against Bournemouth, but Bournemouth is a tricky game away from home, of course. So I do think the creativity might be hindered slightly, but I think the opposition is so bad, and I think the direct runners of Rodgers and Watkins, we saw Palace really hurt Spurs in that sort of way. I can see the same thing once again, but of course Jacob Ramsey out as well. We're not going to see the best Aston Villa team. And as I said, we might see a strong team from Spurs. Is that starting 11 from Spurs their best? Going to even be able to put up a fight against Villa? Probably not. I don't think you should worry about it. But just for those managers that can't get to Watkins, there might be a few glimmers of hope. So in terms of Watkins, if you don't have triple Aston Villa and you own somebody like a Mateta, I think it's an absolute no-brainer. You just buy Watkins. I think he's one of the standout picks for the next 2 weeks. So alongside Watkins, the other player going into game week 37 that's had over 100,000 transfers in is going to be EZE. But as you can see here, I am questioning whether he might actually be in a void rather than a buy. I know that's a little bit controversial, but just let me explain why. So firstly, we got to understand, he is a fantastic buy on what we have seen over the last month or two, I would say. 4 goals in the last 3 league matches. He's only 14% owned, so anybody who's owned EZE has no doubt had an incredible rank rise. I think if you've had a green arrow and you've owned EZE, you can basically thank him over the last month, because all those points that you're accumulating are basically just all coming into your rank. Sometimes when you own a player that's like 90% owned, you don't really see it in terms of your rank. This is the opposite with EZE, and naturally going into this week, you might get less of a rank increase if he does deliver, but that always happens with players that are delivering. And we would possibly argue he's playing for a summer transfer. We do see this. We know that EZE did want to leave Crystal Palace. I think we're expecting him to have some offers to him in the summer. Wouldn't be surprised at all if not only obviously Palace just preparing themselves for the FA Cup final, so he's trying to obviously play well, but you see this. When a player's trying to get a summer move, they step up. And we're seeing that over the last month. And also, people just need to remember that EZE is a great player. We had this debate a couple of months back, maybe even half a year ago on this channel, where we were debating whether EZE should be in a team. I held him for a long time. And we need to remember he's a top bracket player. He just now is finally getting the returns that now people are seeing. In terms of the negatives, now this is why I think he's a potential avoid. Not a complete avoid, but I think he should be a consideration to not buy. The FA Cup final, whether they win or they lose, it is not going to help them in game week 37. So just a reminder, Saturday afternoon, they have the FA Cup final. 3 days later, on the Tuesday, they have got the game week 37 fixture at home against Wolves. So again, like I said, some people are making the argument that they're going to lose the FA Cup final, which based on the bookies odds, that is what they're saying. And then we got to make our own thing. Are they going to go into game week 37, be motivated where there's nothing to play for in the Premier League against Wolves to finish the season? And I would argue Wolves is an example of a team who don't have anything to play for, but with a new manager, Vitor Pereira does want to finish the season strong and isn't exactly just chucking the final few games. So I think, win or lose, that is not a great end to the season. Wolves at home, possibly a rotated Palace team, possibly going deep into that game if it goes to extra time and penalties. And then you finish the season away against Liverpool. Now, I know Liverpool are a little bit on the beach. Palace have the players to hurt any team, but still wouldn't be buying a player with my precious transfers to then possibly miss Wolves and then be away against Liverpool on the final day of the season. Now, I get it. If you think EZE is going to play 90 minutes against Wolves, then I can't really argue that he isn't a great pick for game week 37. But I just want to put that warning out there that the FA Cup final is absolutely huge for Palace. It is one of those sort of things where if they win that trophy, it is going to go down in their history. It isn't just another trophy like Man City, for example, and they're going to put everything into that. And could I see a rotated team in that Wolves game with maybe Enquiries taking minutes from Mateta and fringe players going in? EZE, for example, getting minutes rather than EZE in this game week 37 fixture. I could see that. So just be cautious if you're buying EZE. I think rotation in that Palace team in general could happen. Now, if FPL managers are looking for a differential, maybe to climb up in their mini leagues or overall ranks, then I do want to shout out Marco Asensio. So 6.1 million, he's only 3% owned in the game. Now, normally I am not a fan of this sort of pick because we know that his minutes have been a little bit all over the shop. We've seen early substitutions, we've seen a lot of benchings, but I think there are some real pros here. So first and foremost, the only reason why I do think he is a recommendation for game week 37 is because of the increase in expected minutes. So Tielemans being out means that we're going to see a double pivot of either Kamara and Onana or Kamara and McGinn or Onana and McGinn. So that is basically what that double pivot is going to look like going into game week 37. The number 10 role is up for grabs. We've seen Rodgers play in that position. We've seen McGinn play in that position. If that was just the case, I would avoid Asensio. However, we've also got the red card for Jacob Ramsey, which means that the left wing role is now available. Now, could we possibly see somebody pushed out there like Rodgers, and could we see Matty Cash play on the right wing and McGinn in the 10? Absolutely, that could happen. But 2 starts for Asensio over the last 2 weeks suggests to me that he might start once again in game week 37 and in game week 38. And with him possibly being the penalty taker in this team, with of course the injury to Tielemans and no understanding right now whether it's Watkins or Asensio on penalties, I think there is enough reward now to take the risk on Asensio. Now, of course, he is likely to be the first subbed. In the last 2 games, he got up to around 70 minutes and he was substituted off. So you are basically buying somebody who probably at best will play 75 minutes in each fixture. And the only other downside is that even though he started the last 2, he hasn't accumulated big numbers, only 0.22 expected goal involvement in the last 2. When I look at someone like Asensio, I do think whether he plays 10 minutes or 90, he is going to pick up great numbers because he is just quality. So I think you've got to play the fixtures here. Spurs and Man United, as I've suggested, are fantastic. And the only world I'd buy Asensio is if you are currently sat there with Watkins and Rodgers and you have a third Villa spot. There's no way I would pick Asensio over Rodgers unless, as I said, you're in a position where you are absolutely chasing rank. The reason why I'd still be slightly against that over Rodgers is because I think Rodgers is a better pick than Asensio. I think his numbers are as good. He'll play guaranteed minutes. So right now with Asensio, it is a very niche buy. And I'm seeing some people buying him maybe at the expense of Watkins and Rodgers. So just to kind of clarify right now, in terms of Aston Villa assets, Watkins is absolutely number 1 for the next 2 game weeks, followed by Rodgers. Then I think Asensio is a great buy. I wouldn't prioritise Villa defenders because I still think they can be susceptible to conceding goals. But with the introduction of Onana in the centre mid, I could also see Villa maybe scraping a few games here and just getting the job done. So Asensio is a great differential, but only if you already have Watkins and Rodgers. Now, one of the surprising things going into game week 37 is that Mo Salah is currently in the top 5 most sold players going into game week 37. But when we actually talk about why managers are selling them, maybe it might become a bit more clear, and maybe we need to consider it as well, because I, for one, haven't even entertained the idea of selling Mo Salah, but maybe I might tempt myself after this. So, first up, we got to talk about why managers are selling Mo Salah. Well, if you haven't been on social media, you would have missed the fact that a lot of them are away on their holidays. I know it's early, but it looks like Slot is given an opportunity to go enjoy themselves. So we've had the Liverpool team out in Dubai. We've seen Mo Salah spotted. We've seen Szoboszlai spotted. We've also seen Arne Slot pictured in Ibiza with Wayne Lineker, which is something I didn't think I'd ever see in my life. So the Liverpool team are enjoying some, what you say is well-earned downtime. But of course, from an FPL manager perspective, I'm looking at this thinking, what are you guys doing? I want you on the training field prepping for this Brighton game, which basically means nothing for Liverpool. And that is what it all comes down to. Did Liverpool actually have any motivation to finish the season strong? We saw poor performances, and this is what I mentioned here about the Liverpool levels have dropped. We've seen poor performances against Chelsea. We saw a mixed performance against Arsenal, where I think Arsenal as a team naturally had to elevate Liverpool and probably increase their motivation. An away game against Brighton on a Monday night after being away in Dubai and Ibiza, I just don't see a great performance from Liverpool. And again, at this point in the season, it becomes very difficult because you have to bring your own gut feeling and narrative into your decision making. Some managers probably think that Liverpool might be a bit more carefree and might score more goals, but might concede equally amount of goals. And if that is the case, then Mo Salah has to stay in your team. Because as I've said here, some of the pros, he is guaranteed game time regardless. I will be astonished if Arne Slot looks at his team and goes, you know what, Mo Salah deserves a rest. I think one player that is locked in for game time is going to be him. And importantly, his effective ownership, the EO, still remains around 100%. So if you do sell Mo Salah, you are taking a huge risk because Brighton, even though they do step up in the big games and they have a good track history, it's not like they're watertight defensively. So I can still see Liverpool scoring. And if Salah is one of those and you've sold him, that is really going to hurt your overall rank. And is it a risk that you want to take right now? And the underlying numbers remain good. But what I do want to say is we've seen a slight change from goal scoring to creativity. We're seeing the expected goals drop off, but the expected assists increase. We kind of saw that where he created the opportunity for Szoboszlai with that third man run to square it off in their opening goal against Arsenal. And that is my slight concern is, are we going to see a slight change in tack from Arne Slot where Salah's picking that up in the middle third and playing those incredible cut passes through the defences? Possibly. So for me right now, no 1 goal since game week 28, not ideal. I only would consider selling Mo Salah is if it is a cash cow move to fund other moves. So for example, if you're in a position right now where you have no way of getting Ollie Watkins, you deem him the top captaincy pick, and there's no other way that you can get there apart from selling Mo Salah, then I can kind of get behind it. I personally think the Brighton game is going to be a little bit of a sluggish affair from Liverpool. Maybe Mo Salah down to Cole Palmer frees you up enough funds to then upgrade your forward to someone like an Ollie Watkins. Let's say Salah down to Palmer, Mateta up to Watkins as part of a free transfer. I can kind of get behind that. But if you're just selling Mo Salah for the sake of selling him, then I can't really get behind it. It has to be a calculated move in order for you to free up additional funds. And if you were just doing Mo Salah to EZE, I'm not a huge fan of that sideways move at all. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. I totally get behind selling Mo Salah, I'm going to be honest with you, but only if it is part of a strategy that enables you to get someone like an Ollie Watkins. Finally, I wanted to give a shout out to some of the cheap forwards in the game because there's all talk about Ollie Watkins right now, but if you really can't afford him and you're looking for an alternative, I think there are 3 for game week 37 that need to be on your radar, and that is going to be Everton's Beto, Leicester's Jamie Vardy, and of course Ipswich's Liam Delap. So when we take a look at the fixtures in isolation, they are just some of the best fixtures. Everton at home against Southampton in Everton's final game ever at Goodison Park, which they're definitely going to want to go out with a bang, and you couldn't really ask for a better fixture to finish the season. I know Southampton put up a resolute performance against Man City, but I just think this is a recipe for goals. Everton feel-good factor, party mode against Southampton, and Everton put 3 goals in against Fulham in game week 36. I think that is just a great opportunity for managers if they want to go for someone like a Beto. Leicester finish the season at home against Ipswich, their final, home game of the season against Ipswich. Of course, they're getting relegated, so they are going to, again, want to put on a performance for their fans to show them some love. And then we got Ipswich away against Leicester, which, again, up against one another, not ideal in this situation. You probably would back the player that is at home. So when I'm looking at the fixtures right now, I think Everton is the real standout. And when we take a look at Beto, he's the cheapest. He started the last 3 league games. We were slightly concerned whether he was being out of favour. And he scored 2 goals in the last 2 games. So I would think that his start against Southampton is pretty much locked in. I know Calvert-Lewin is back from injury, but I don't see them just chucking him straight in. I don't see any need to when Beto is more than doing enough. But I would see an early substitution from Beto being on the cards that managers do need to consider a little bit. I think Beto's fantastic. The only problem is game week 38 away against Newcastle is awful. The big thing, Newcastle will be playing for something. Everton are going to be coming off that high of a final game ever at Goodison. I could just see them getting rolled over against Newcastle. So then you're likely benching Beto, or maybe you're looking to then sell Beto in game week 38, and then that requires a lot of transfers in the bank. In terms of Delap, I think he has the better 2 fixtures. I think Leicester away is good for a goal, and then West Ham at home in the final home game of the season I think is perfectly fine. But as I stated here, he has recently been getting subbed before 70 minutes. Now, he is their main guy. He is their goal scorer, but now they've been relegated and there is basically a 100% chance of him leaving Ipswich. I think what we're seeing right now is they got to start him because he's their main guy, but they also are giving opportunity to some players in this Ipswich squad that haven't had it, and it's perfectly understandable to do so, and I think that will continue over the next 2 games. So even though I think Delap is my favourite in terms of fixtures and in terms of underlying numbers, I think we just got to avoid Delap because of the transfer speculation and those minutes being a little bit worrying. The big one that I think a lot of managers want to go to is going to be Jamie Vardy. And the reason being is because, of course, he's leaving Leicester at the end of the season. It's his final home game for Leicester against Ipswich. It's an amazing fixture where Ipswich always concede goals. And I just think Vardy is going to go off with a bang because he needs 1 more goal to score 200 goals for Leicester. He's already that all-time scorer, but 200 goals sounds a lot better than 199. And you know Leicester are going to do everything they possibly can to get this guy a penalty to get that record. The final game of the season away against Bournemouth is not ideal at all, and I think Vardy falls in the same category as Beto, as you basically are buying them for game week 37, and then you got to look at that in game week 38 and ask yourself, is it worth the transfer? But if you're out there right now looking for a differential forward that's less than 10% owned and you can't get to Ollie Watkins, I'll be buying Jamie Vardy. I think it's the perfect recipe going into this week. I think the fixture's great. Yes, Beto probably is the sensible move, but from a vibes perspective, Jamie Vardy's your guy this week. So let me know in the comment section, are you buying any of these 3 cheap forwards? Yes, guys, okay, that is going to wrap up today's video, looking at the best players to buy and avoid going into game week 37. I really hope it has provided some value. Can't believe we only have 1 game week left. I will be dropping my game week 37 team selection tomorrow morning, really early on, because of course the deadline is later on that evening UK time. So make sure, if you haven't already, you are subscribed to the channel and hitting that notification bell. I won't be doing a deadline live stream, unfortunately. I am out, but of course the content will continue into next week ahead of the final game week of the season. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the comment section. I'll try to get to them, and as always, have a great day. Take care. Cheers.